So I'm a graduate of the 70th RTT. Entered training June 15th of 92 up in the first class at SPA New Braintree, and graduated October 16th of 1992. I left the academy, broke in out in B Troop at Northampton. I worked at Northampton. I worked at SP Russell. Then I transferred to the Turnpike. Spent about 6 months at SP Westfield on the midnight shift. Then I spent about 4 years working out of E2 SP Charlton. And I floated between all three shifts depending upon whatever out there. Around 2000, I was appointed to the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit. I spent right around a little over 7 years on the truck team doing work there. Then I got promoted to sergeant. For a very short period of time, I was working as a new sergeant at SP Springfield on the evening shift. My family and I, shortly after I was promoted, we moved to Cape Cod. So then what I did eventually was I matriculated down to working out of the barracks in Bourne and the barracks in Yarmouth. Sprinkle in the middle of that time when I was in D Troop, I spent about 1 year assigned to the Incident Management Assistance Team. It was the only time that I was in plain clothes, was that 1 year that I was on the IMAT team. The IMAT team folded due to staffing shortages around 2010, I think it was, and then I went back to D Troop. I retired from the state police at the end of November in 2013. I would say that I can't say it's my very first, but one of my earliest and really lasting memories of the Massachusetts State Police was growing up in the city of Worcester when I was around 14 years old. Was when George Hanna was murdered on Route 20 in Auburn. He was actually murdered about a mile from where my wife, who I'd met several years later, right near where she grew up. And the search for the murderers who took out Trooper Hanna was very much focused in Worcester, in Great Brook Valley, and in the Maine South section of Worcester. I live not in Maine South, but I live not too far from Maine South. And I just remember about a day or a day and a half, the state police were absolutely everywhere. And I was kind of in awe at the professionalism, the presentation, the awesome looking uniforms, just the manner in which the troopers that I saw carried themselves. And it made an impression on me, and I decided at a young age that that's what I wanted to do. So I graduated from St. John's High School in Shrewsbury in 1986. Monkeyed around. I went to college for about 1 semester. It wasn't for me. Grew up in a little bit of a troubled home. So I went to work. And in February of 1988, I started working as a corrections officer at the Worcester County Jail and House of Correction. It was kind of funny back then, because back then, you get hired off the street. I'm 19 years old. I got hired off the street and no training whatsoever. They put a uniform on you, and I'm working in Maxi Block. All the pre-trial people that are in there awaiting trial for murder, rape, every sort of god-awful crime. It's not like, when you go down to the medium security, minimum security, those are post-sentence people. These are all the pre-sentence. So most of these people are going to Walpole, And again, absolutely no training. About a year in, I did get sent to the Mass Department of Correction Training Academy. One of my friends who I went through the training with was in the Marines. At this time, I was also on the waiting list for the state police. I had taken the state police exam in 1987. That was the exam that the 69th RTT came off of. I was rejected from that class because I was slightly over on the body weight. I'm talking like 0.5% over on the body fat. And it ended up being the best thing in the world for me because I was 19, 20 years old. I wasn't ready yet to be a cop. And during that time, I made judicious use of that time, going to work at the county jail. I've found in my career that some of the best cops are people who worked inside as COs, because they get to understand the criminal element. They've been lied to, they've been beaten, they've been cheated by everybody. So you come out with a little bit better of a worldview. But then an impression of one of my friends who I work with, having served in the Marine Corps, I decided to enlist in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, and I would have gone active duty except for 2 things. Number 1, I was on the waiting list for the next class for the state police, and number 2, I was engaged to be married. So that kept me closer to home. So I did eventually get called for the state police in 1992, actually late 1991, I got my letter. And so like I said, I entered in June of 1992. Once I got on the state police, I started taking courses toward it was more focused on the Quinn bill than anything else. And I never finished my bachelor's degree. I finished about 3 years worth of college. So the best I ever got on the Quinn bill scale was I got 10% for an associate's equivalency from Western New England. I think everybody, when they retire, they have something. And I tell people when they retire from our job or from other jobs, like the fire service, other police departments, that when you retire, the nightmares don't retire, they come with you. And the one that really impacted me was, remember, it's one of the most infamous murder cases in New England history, was the Jeffrey Curley murder case. And I played I originally started with this very withdrawn role. I remember, I think it was Greg Foley and Al Hunt from Middlesex CPAC. They were in the center of it. They were working the case from the beginning. And we knew that the murderers had dumped his body somewhere in Maine. And southern Maine, somewhere in the seacoast area, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We actually set up a command post at the Portsmouth, New Hampshire PD, and it became a search exercise. And one day my phone rings and it's Jack Crawford. And Jack Crawford called me up, and at the time I was a land navigation instructor for the state police. And he said he needed somebody to come up that could read MGRS maps and could basically push pins in a map to show which rivers that we checked because the body was dumped in a river. So I went up there, and I think it was 2 days that I was working up there in the CP pushing pins in the map before the body was located. And Blake Gilmore was in the water with the dive team after it was discovered, pushing it out. Myself, Billy Nasuti, Eric Gahagan, and my buddy Rob Nichols from Maine State Police. We were on the shore side, and we ended up taking the Rubbermaid container with Jeffrey's body out. We put it back in the back of the underwater recovery van, and we all brought Jeffrey's remains up to the medical examiner's office up in Augusta. And we were there for all of that. And that was the moment when I decided I never wanted to work in CPAC. I always thought I wanted to be a detective. That case, my kids were young at the time. It had a really profound negative impact on me. And I decided I wanted to stay in uniform for the rest of my career. You know what I would say is seeing people who I worked with that grew in their roles and ended up attaining serious rank. When I retired, I was only a sergeant. And I say only a sergeant, I was very proud to have the rank of sergeant. And I have people who I work with, I'm a senior trooper, they're a boot. I had people that I work with, I'm a sergeant, they were my troopers. And I look at them now and I see some of these people with command roles within the agency. Majors, captains, lieutenants, seeing people that I was friends with, that I worked side by side with, that were my colleagues, like Colonel Mason and Colonel Mon, very close friends of mine. I worked out of the Yarmouth barracks. I would see them all the time because they were both working out of Cape and Islands DA's office. So I would say my proudest moments were seeing excellence in other people achieving what they achieved in their careers. And a funny story is there are a few people years ago, a million years ago, I used to be a drill instructor at the student trooper program. We're talking back in 95, 96, 97. There are people who went through the student trooper program where I was a senior drill instructor. They're now a couple are lieutenants on the job. There's a sergeant and there's 1 or 2 troopers. So to see that, and I had them when they were in high school, that makes me proud. I think that one of the biggest challenges that I dealt with, because again, I was in field almost my whole career. I was in field my whole career. I was in uniform all but that 1 year. I was in the incident management team, and that was a field assignment. That was special ops. I spent 1 year as a troop representative, dealing with the in-house politics with a couple of people on the executive board of SPAM. That was difficult. Even after I left SPAM, and back around, I think it was 2008, 2009, we had a big blow up and people were taking sides. One of my very, very close and dear friends, God rest his soul, Dave Cortez, was right in the middle of it. And it really split the job in two. Some of the in-house SPAM politics. And then I would say, and again, it's all internal. Like they say that the people that you arrest don't cause you any of the stress. It's the people that you work with every day that bring you the best joys and the greatest stress. Sometimes I had a love-hate relationship with some people in management, probably related to my union activities in some ways. In other ways, it was just because sometimes I just don't know when to shut my mouth. That could be a weakness, that could be a strength, I don't know, but for purposes of my career, it certainly didn't help. There was a company, and I won't mention the name of the company, but it's still a big company out in Western Mass in the 413. This is when I was on the truck team, they were involved in a couple of fatal accidents in upstate New York, and they were working their drivers, running them too hard, and they were lying on their hours of service. And one day I get a call from my sergeant, and he tells me, listen, tomorrow we're all gonna meet at this location in the 413, and we actually conducted a raid of a construction company's offices. And it was the strangest thing to me because we're running through the door as if we're chasing after Pablo Escobar. We're all wearing raid jackets, not just state police, but we had the U.S. Inspector General, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, NHTSA, NTSB, and 47 other, alphabet agencies with us. And we all go into this office, and it's loaded with women who are in there doing secretarial duties, and we scared them to hell, and we chased them all as gently as we could into the giant break room, and we had to stand there and watch them and take them to the ladies' room for bathroom breaks. We had a couple of females with us to do that, while the feds were loading bankers' boxes with all sorts of records. And that was one of those moments when I'm there and I'm looking at these terrified women and I'm saying, what the hell am I doing? I should have just taken a vac day today. I'd feel better about myself. We're talking 1993. I'm working out of the Northampton barracks. I think I was on the midnight shift. And my line mate was Tim Bombard. Tim was in the fire marshal's office. I think he recently retired. Great guy. He was a former Worcester cop, and he was one of the funniest guys that I know. So I had just gotten my first cruiser after 6 months of driving my personal car from Worcester to Northampton and back again. They gave me a car, and it was a 1987 Ford LTD with about 200,000 miles on it, holes in the floor that I had to patch up with license plates and everything else. Cruiser number 448 Bravo. Typical state police thing. I take it home. I'm a mechanic by trade. I'm a school-trained mechanic. I went through the entire thing. I spent a weekend underneath the hood, underneath the car, turning wrenches, got everything as best as I could. I must have washed it twice to get all the crap off of it. I put about 5 coats of wax on it, go through the entire interior, Windex everything down, armor all the floors, and it's beautiful. So I go into work that night at 11 p.m. I'm on the road. It's shift change. Tim Bombard's on the desk, and I tell him how all the work that I did. My car's spotless. You can eat off the floors. Little did I know, he started going around to the different offices with an envelope, and he gets all the little white dots out of all the 3-hole punch things throughout the entire building. And there must have been 1,000 of them. And he says he's got to run down. Can I watch the desk for him? Yeah, no problem. I thought he was running out to his cruiser. So what he did was he went down and he put them all right down. He dumped them all right down the defroster in my car, and he set it for the defrost to come on high. So here I am, I go running down, I'm looking at my beautiful cruiser with the 19 coats of wax on it, the armor all floors. I put the key in as soon as I turn it, 1,000 little white dots all over the car. And I just sat there and I was like, I defeated the intense desire to go upstairs and punch him out. And I just said, good for you. And I went down to the local car wash and I spent about an hour vacuuming out my car. One of the things that I remember was when I first got on the job, and you remember back in getting on in 92, everything, whenever you wanted to run somebody, you had to run it through, you had to run a plate, you had to run a license. Out there we're at 448 to Station B, can you give me a 9 and 10 on Mass 123 Alpha Bravo Charlie, 91 South just before exit 21. And everything was done that way. I was mentioning earlier, Tim Bombard, he got a cruiser, his was I can't even remember my kids' birthdays, but I can remember cruiser numbers for some reason. He had 518, and that cruiser had formerly belonged to the MDC police. So that cruiser had an MDT in it, mobile data terminal. And that was the coolest thing in the world was, oh my God, this cruiser has mobile. I don't have to run stuff through Rocky, who was the dispatcher out in Northampton. Rocky with a gravelly voice. He was the best. Was it Matt Ryan was his name? But we called him Rocky. So anyways, the thing with the MDT was the screen was this big. It was green and yellow, so it looked like, you know, an old game of Pong, that kind of a resolution. You'd have to turn the system on. It would take 10 minutes for it to warm up. Then it would connect, and it only worked in maybe half of the patrol area. But we all thought that it was the coolest thing. So, like, if Timmy had the desk, I would beg to take his car out, because I was like, I can run plates till 3 in the morning on a midnight shift and not worry about people yelling at me, because at 3 in the morning, nobody wants radio calls going over at all. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Another thing that I remember was back in the day when we had repeaters, the old repeater radios. And like we say, you know, if you couldn't call for help with it, you could use it as a weapon to kill the person assaulting you, because it was big and heavy. It was like a brick. I never had a repeater. A couple times I had to fight my way back to the car to call for help. So 1994 was the first time that I had seen a portable 800 radio. Absolute first time I ever saw it was during World Cup. We'd done all the training. I was on the old mobile uniform field force, the precursor to the CERT team. We meet down at the DPW yard right off of 495 and Route 1. Major Don Cody shows up, and he opens up his trunk, and he has 100 800 megahertz radios in boxes in the trunk of his cruiser. And he passes them out to everybody. And he warns us all, don't damage them. And I couldn't get over the fact that this is an 800 radio. I have something now I can talk to someone if I need help, right? Before I carry a cell phone. At the end of the night, we'd have to turn them back in. So I turned it into Major Cody, and I said, sir, can I ask you a question? And I'm not trying to be a smart ass. Certainly, Trooper, what's that? I says, how come we can't just keep these radios and use them on patrol? And he says, because if I let you guys keep them and one of you broke your radio, then we'd only have 99. And that's one of those ones where you're driving home the whole way and going, it just didn't make any sense. We had 100 portable radios that are key to officer safety, and they're in the trunk of someone's car because, heaven forbid, one might break. I think that you should maybe order 110 expecting 10% breakage.